Dear Lord, we thank you that we've come to midweek and time to gather together again to be refreshed through your message. We want to lift up to you this movement, lift up to you your leaders, and lift up to you the Canadian camp meeting that will be taking place soon, that your blessing would be upon all of those involved in organizing and translation and hosting, and our speakers as well. We just praise you and thank you for the blessed opportunity to be a part of this and how you have brought us thus far, Lord. We know we could not be here without you. And we pray that we go in your strength, that we would, whatever trial comes our way, that our faith would endure till the end, that we might be shining examples and living testimonies of your word and your truth, as we will find ourselves in positions to go to battle when it comes to sexism and many other issues. But I pray that we would be such witnesses that we know that there will be those that won't want to hear, but we pray to be the witnesses necessary for those that will need to hear. It might be people silent in the background, that it might make a difference in their lives, Lord. We pray to be the examples of your glory and your character. We ask you, as we continue to review this document by A.T. Jones, that you would continue to increase our understanding and knowledge of the subject of the Supreme Court, of equality, and of the role of the papacy and Protestantism, that we would more clearly understand it, the issues at hand, and as we approach the Sunday law. We thank you and praise you for all that you do in our lives. May you bless us tonight, we pray. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so you might use the chat just in case if you need me or need anything, or speak up, and if we can hear you. If we don't answer, we'll know, you'll know we didn't hear you.
Okay. We connected back to our Wi-Fi.
Oh, to your regular. Okay. Yeah, it was really hit and miss. It's kind of a shame when it happens that way, when you get something that's supposed to work.
Yeah, it could be that we just don't have the booster on right, and that we have too much interference because we're in town. I don't know.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Yeah, a lot of factors, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we marked, but I don't know where there was confusion because I had a different document than what you had. But I wanted to pick up on page 28, which may have been right around near where we were at. And from what I was looking back on and remembering. But if it starts to sound too familiar, go ahead and stop me. But I was reviewing some of this morning, and it's going to go into the role of the papacy and how closely we resemble that structure in the behavior of what we're doing. So, and we know that what it was going through is these examples here. I know I had it fresh in my mind here this morning. The examples of what they were using to make this a Christian nation, and the various examples they were using. So kind of not running as fresh in my mind, but I wanted to pick up here before because just like a page or so away from going into the next section. And I remember we ended it at one of those sections. I hope this was it. So here we would ask two questions and inquire whether anyone can have any difficulty in answering them. Does this decision maintain the new order of things, the decision of the Supreme Court? Does it, the decision, all this is justified in the government and is declared to be the meaning of the Constitution of the United States, but in favor of Protestantism? Does this decision maintain the new order of things to which this government and nation stand pledged by the Great Seal of the United States, or does it sanction and restore and establish here the old order of things, which our governmental fathers hoped we should forever escape? So is this the new order of things, or is it the old, as in the papacy? So what then is this but the legal establishment of the very likeness of the papacy, copy, an image, and that by the supreme judicial authority of the national government, what more could be done to make the likeness of the papacy in the principle of the thing? In the principle, we say not in its positive workings, for life is not for this given to it, that it should speak and act, Revelation 13:15. But so far as the making of the evil thing and the establishment of the principle of it, the thing is done. The tree does not yet stand with its branches widespread, bearing its pernicious fruit, but the tree is planted. And that's interesting to put it that way, because it's going to grow and produce this pernicious fruit as it continues to grow. And as certainly as the branches and the fruit are all in the natural stock that is planted, and it is only a question of time when they will appear, so certainly the wide-spreading branches and the pernicious fruit of the full-grown tree are in the evil stock of church and state that has now been planted by the Supreme Court in and for the government of the United States. And it is only a question of time when these fruits will inevitably appear. It will be helpful at this point to take a glance at the making and establishment of the old order of things. In the beginning of the 4th century, there was in the Roman Empire a powerful ecclesiastical organization, the leaders and managers of which were only anxious to assert the religious oath, the requirement of the religious test, oath, and qualification for office, public taxation for support of religion and religious teachers, the requirement of a belief in the Trinity and inspiration of the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments, the guilt of blasphemy upon everyone who speaks or acts in contempt of the established religion, and laws for the observance of Sunday, with the general cessation of all secular business. All this is declared by unanimous decision of the Supreme Court of the United States to be the meaning of the Constitution of the United States. This too, to the utter oblivion of all the history of the making of that Constitution, in open contradiction of the specific terms of that Constitution, and in defiance of the clear intent of that Constitution, as declared in the supreme law by those who made it. Now, what was ever the papacy more than is this thing which is established and justified in and by this decision? What more was ever required by the papacy in all phases of the old order of things than is allowed and justified in this decision? What more was ever required by the papacy itself than that the Christian religion should be made the national religion, and that the discipline of the church should be maintained by the civil power, that the religious test oath should be applied to all, that the public should be taxed for the support of religion and religious teachers, that there should be required a belief in the doctrine of the Trinity and the inspiration of the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments, that the guilt of blasphemy should be inflicted upon everyone who should speak or act in contempt of the established religion, and that everybody should be required by law to observe Sunday. No more than this was ever required by the papacy. And in fact, no more could be required, for this covers all. And by this decision, all this is justified in this government and is declared to be the meaning of the Constitution of the United States, but in favor of Protestantism. So all the same things that the papacy did, and there was nothing more that needed to be done because that covered everything. All that was done. And by this decision, all this is justified in our own government, and that they declare the meaning of the Constitution to be this, but it favors Protestantism instead of Catholicism. So if you remember, we read one where they, one of these documents where it was specifically, and it might be this document later, I don't remember, but specifically, they didn't just want to be a Christian nation. They wanted to name it, to call it a Protestant Christian nation, completely separating itself and identifying itself separate from the Catholic Church. In other words, their glory hat that they are now in charge, and they're going to be the ruling power, just as the papacy was. And it's really amazing, because how could you think that that's something to be proud of? You get a pretty bad mind when you think that that's something to be proud of, but that's what they're working towards. And we read that in those documents that talked about their behavior in the mid 1600s, before they even came here. That sect of Calvinism that was anxious to penalize, even by death, people that did not accept them as the true religion of God. So here we would ask two questions and inquire whether anyone can have any difficulty in answering them. And I know I didn't back up, so we must be asking the same thing. Does this decision maintain the new order of things to which this government and nation stand pledged by the Great Seal of the United States, or does it sanction and restore and establish here the old order of things, which our governmental fathers hoped we should forever escape? What then is this but the legal establishment of the very likeness of the papacy? I know I just read this. It must be in here twice. And the fruits will appear. Okay, so yeah, that whole paragraph's in there twice. So it will be helpful at this point. This is how the papacy was made. It will be helpful at this point to take a glance at the making and establishment of that old order of things. So if we remember on our line that pagan Rome ruled for a time being 360 years, and 321 or 331, somebody help me out if I've got that wrong. When pagan Rome and papal Rome ruled together, when Constantinople fell. Is that correct? Do I say that right? Somebody with me that want to make sure I don't misstate something. Like huh?
What was the question?
Oh, when Constantinople, when they took Constantinople, wasn't it? When with the fall of pagan Rome not fall of pagan Rome, but where pagan Rome and papal Rome began to rule together for 200 years. I'm missing some of the details and I don't want to have it wrong.
I'm not sure. I know he went to Constantinople, and that's when it kind of fell apart, right?
Okay. 321 or 331?
321.
Francisco says 321.
Okay.
But did he move the seat from one place to another, and that's when things started to fall apart, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. And so then what you had was pagan Rome and papal Rome ruling together for about 200 years. And we see in that you have the 10 kings and the issues that are going on there. And then we know, this came up in a discussion earlier, that's why this part's fresh on my mind. We know that it was France which acted as the king of the north along with the papacy, that put which was the premier of the 10 kings, put the papacy on the throne in 538. So this is how the papacy was made. So you have this period of time, that 200 years, that's bringing up the papacy. Hey guys, stop. Hey. Sorry, it's been a long wrestling match. I thought it would have ended by now. So you have this period of time that and all these different events that bring the papacy to be on the throne. And we understand that France is the one that seated papacy on the throne. So, and we know that history is to be repeated, as France played the role of the king of the north, the United States. So just keep that in your mind, that the United States plays that role, because this history of this 200-year history is, if I understand correctly, is what we've been living in this nation in the putting the papacy back on the throne at the Sunday law. Okay, so it will be helpful at this point to take a glance at the making and establishment of that old order of things. In the beginning of the 4th century, there was in the Roman Empire a powerful ecclesiastical organization, the leaders and managers of which were only anxious to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for themselves. So they want the church to be only anxious to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for themselves. Okay, so it was, let's see, while it was the hope of every bishop in the empire to make politics a branch of theology, it was the aim of Constantine to make theology a branch of politics. In an intrigue, therefore, with Constantine, they succeeded in bartering to him their influence and power in theology for his in politics. As one of the very first fruits of this, Constantine was established in the rulership of one half of the Roman Empire. Jointly with Licinius, he then issued the Edict of Milan, and I remember we read this before, but it'll be good to go through this again. He issued the Edict of Milan, reversing the persecuting edicts of Diocletian and granting liberty and full freedom to the Christians to observe their own mode of worship, granting likewise to the Christians and to all the free choice to follow that mode of worship which they may wish, that each may have the privilege to select and to worship whatsoever divinity he pleases, and commanding that the churches and church property which had been confiscated by Diocletian should be restored to the whole body of Christians, and to each conventicle respectively. Is that what that is? Conventicle respectively. So he's going to reverse what Diocletian did, and he's granting this liberty to Christians, and that's in the Edict of Milan, but we're going to see that they clarified something on that later. This was all just and proper enough and innocent enough in itself and on its face, if that had been all there was to it. But behind it, there lay this ecclesiastical organization, ambitious to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for itself. And that religio-political intrigue, which had been entered into to feed and satisfy this ambition. So you've got this religio-political ecclesiastical organization that is behind this. This ecclesiastical organization likewise claimed to be the legitimate and only true representative and depository of Christianity in the world, and it was the Catholic Church. And no sooner had the Edict of Milan ordered the restoration of property to the Christians than it was seized upon and made an issue by which to secure the imperial recognition and the legal establishment of the Catholic Church. The rule had long been established that all who did not agree with the bishops of the Catholic Church were necessarily heretics and not Christians at all. It was now claimed by the Catholic Church that therefore none such were entitled to any benefit from the edict restoring property to the Christians. In other words, the Catholic Church disputed the right of any others than Catholics to receive property or money under the Edict of Milan by disputing their right to the title of Christians. And by this issue, the Catholic Church forced an imperial decision as to who were Christians. And under the circumstances, by the power and influence which she held, and by what she had already done with these in behalf of Constantine, it was a foregone conclusion, if not the concerted plan, that this decision would be in favor of the Catholic Church. Let's see, under the circumstances, by the power of influence which she held, and by what she had already done with these in behalf of Constantine, it was foregone conclusion, if not the concerted plan. So the conclusion, or perhaps it was planned this way, that this decision would be in favor of the Catholic Church. So consequently, Constantine's edict to the proconsul contained these words: "It is our will that when thou shalt receive this epistle, if any of those things belonging to the Catholic Church of the Christians in the several cities or other places are now possessed either by the decurions or any others, these thou shalt cause immediately to be restored to their churches. Since we have previously determined that whatever these same churches before possessed should be restored to them. And I think it might be interesting to note or open up on discussion that, so this is I don't know if it said the date for the Edict of Milan, maybe somebody has that handy. But we know in that period of time, you had Ephesus, right? Somebody help me out with that, with you go through Ephesus, and then you go to when you get to the Church of Persecution. So they were living in this time of persecution, is the point that I'm trying to make. There's this time of persecution that is happening, and this is what Constantine supposedly is stopping, is this persecution. And I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, but thinking of when you had that persecution of the Dark Ages and you approach the 1260, and now they come here and they're supposed to have that freedom. And what are the Protestants doing? The Protestants spend all this time from 1798 till now, or even before, they were already started with it in the 1600s, to do the same thing that the Catholic Church did in this period of time. And they're going to specify, the Protestants are going to specify who the true church is, just like the Catholic Church did. So they have Christians and they have Catholic Christians. Nor was it enough that the emperor should decide that all these favors were for the Catholic Church of the Christians. He was obliged next to decide which was the Catholic Church. This question was immediately raised and disputed, and in consequence, an edict was drawn from Constantine, addressed to the same proconsul of the province of Africa, in which were these words: "It is my will that these men within the province entrusted to thee in the Catholic Church, over which Sicellinus presides, who give their services to this holy religion, and whom they commonly call clergy, shall be held totally free and exempt from all public offices," etc. The party over which Sicellinus presided in Africa was the party which was in communion with the Bishop of Rome. The other party then drew up a long series of charges against Sicellinus and sent them to the emperor with a petition that he would have the case examined by the bishops of Gaul. Constantine was in Gaul at the time, but instead of having the bishops of Gaul examine into the case alone, he commissioned 3 of them to go to Rome and sit with the Bishop of Rome in council to decide the case. Constantine sent a letter with copies of all the charges and complaints which had been lodged with him. And in this letter to the Bishop of Rome, with other things, he said this: "Since it neither escapes your diligence that I show such regard for the Holy Catholic Church, that I wish you, upon the whole, to leave no room for schism or division." This council, of course, confirmed the emperor's word that the Catholic Church in Africa was indeed the one over which Sicellinus presided. The other party appealed from this decision and petitioned that another and larger council be called to examine the question. Another council was called, composed of almost all the bishops of Constantine's dominions. This council likewise confirmed the emperor's word and the decision of the former council. Then the opposing party appealed from the decision of the council to the emperor himself. After hearing their appeal, he sustained the action of the councils and reaffirmed his original decision. Then the opposing party rejected not only the decisions of the councils, but the decision of the emperor himself. Then Constantine addressed a letter to Sicellinus bestowing more favor upon what he now called the legitimate and most holy Catholic religion, and empowering him to use the civil power to compel the opposing party, the Donatus, to submit. This portion of his letter is in the following words. So Constantine, he's the emperor. That makes him the state, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the Edict of Milan was in 313.
Okay, thank you. So this is just prior to working our way there. Okay. Okay, so in these words, Constantine Augustus to Sislanius, Bishop of Carthage. As we have determined that in all the provinces of Africa, Numidia, and Mauritania, something should be granted to certain ministers of the legitimate and most holy Catholic religion. To defray their expenses, I have given letters to Ursus, the most illustrious lieutenant governor of Africa, and have communicated to him that he shall provide to pay to your authority 3,000 follies, about $100,000. And as I have ascertained that some men who are of no settled mind wish to divert the people from the most holy Catholic Church by a certain pernicious adulteration, I wish thee to understand that I have given both to the proconsul Annulinus and to Patricius, vicar general of the prefects, when present, the following injunctions: that among all the rest, they should particularly pay the necessary attention to this, nor should by any means tolerate that this should be overlooked. Wherefore, if thou seest any of these men persevering in this madness, thou shalt without any hesitancy proceed to the aforesaid judges and report it to them, that they may animadvert upon them as I commanded them when present. So you definitely see church and state happening in this, and with a certain church being the favored one. And when a certain church is going to be the favored one, you're always going to lead to persecution. Thus, no sooner was it decided what was the legitimate and most holy Catholic Church than the civil power was definitely placed at the disposal of that church, with positive instructions to use that power in compelling conformity to the new imperial religion. Persecution was begun at once. The Donatist bishops, we have Susan here with us tonight. I like because she's always quick to look up words for us, and I passed several that maybe she'll look at it later.
You want to know the definition of animadvert?
Yeah, well, okay. So let's see, I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Donatism was a Christian sect leading to a schism in the Catholic Church in the region of the Church of Carthage from the 4th to the 6th century. Let me close the door. I can do sometimes around here. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, this is in that period of time. They argued that Christian clergy must be faultless for their ministry to be effective and their prayers and sacraments to be valid. Donatism had its roots in the long-established Christian community of the Roman Africa province, present-day Tunisia, in the northeast of Algeria and the western coast of Libya, in the persecutions of Christians under Diocletian, named after the Berber Christian bishop Donatus Magnus. Donaticism flourished during the 4th and 5th centuries. Okay, so where was that other word? That was back up here, right here. Here we go.
Definition of Donatus?
Yeah, that was Donatism.
Okay, so that's a member of a Christian sect that developed in Northern Africa in AD 311 and maintained that it alone constituted the whole and only true church, and that baptism and of the Orthodox clergy were invalid.
Okay. Always fighting over who's the true religion. Rather
And verb, and it's comment unpredictably, usually followed by an on or upon to an minimum advert at length upon his faulty use of English, obsolete, to take cognizance or notice of. I still don't quite understand it.
The one I found on here, it says pass criticism or censure on, or to speak against. Somebody trying to talk?
Definition, pass criticism or censure on. Okay, speak out against. That's a better definition.
So if they speak out, okay. Okay, so let's see, the Donatist bishops were driven out and Constantine commanded that their churches should be delivered to the Catholic party. Nor was this done at all peacefully. Each party recriminated on the other, but neither denies the barbarous scenes of massacre and license which devastated the African cities. The Donatists boasted of their martyrs, and the cruelties of the Catholic party rested on their own admission. They deny not, they proudly vindicate their barbarities. Is the vengeance of God to be defrauded of its victims? They cried. So again, going back to there's no new thing under the sun, that they actually believe that this is the work of God to do this. And the government, by becoming a partisan, had lost the power to keep the peace. And the government, by becoming a partisan, had lost the power. Who has thoughts on that statement? Would that have, would partisan mean, could it be related to like compromise? Anybody?
It means they're taking sides.
Right. But so the government's taking sides, okay.
So the government is taking the side of the Catholic Church.
Right, okay. Okay, and that's kind of, it's kind of what I was meaning, but I don't know how to, I don't know that it can be connected to compromise. But we know that whatever's going on now with a Democrat president plays a significant role in what is coming in the culmination of things. And I say that thinking back on what are our examples, and I know we have examples. When Obama was president, you had a Republican House and a Republican Senate. What we were talking about Clinton, that's the example I was thinking of, when Clinton signed the DOMA, right? I think it was DOMA that he signed it like 1 o'clock in the morning, and they made the LGBT community very angry. And I'm just thinking because he also didn't have the power either at that time. So, and just wondering if that can be related to, to having, so the government, is government taking the side, or are you talking about, like, if we're looking at today, is it our far right side of the government that's taking the side? I guess I'm thinking out loud. I don't know if you have any thoughts or if you're following what I'm trying to think about here.
And is it the president or is it the Congress? I don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to make a big difference.
Right, exactly. So because the government can do regardless of the president. The president is supposed to go along with, they make the laws, right? And you've got the judicials that's supposed to uphold it. Okay, so okay.
I think, isn't it the Congress makes the Supreme Court enforce,
Yeah, so you have a government, a partisan government becoming partisan, right? But you can have a partisan government in place with a Democrat president.
right?
Okay.
And so the Congress makes the laws. it's the judicial to interpret those laws and to see if they're constitutionally correct.
Right.
And it's the executive who are supposed to enforce the laws if it's constitutionally correct.
Correct. That you're right. You're right. That's exactly.
Okay, so we have back in the, back several pages where you have the Supreme Court making this declaration. And clearly they're interpreting, and that's what A.G. Jones is saying, they're interpreting the Constitution already at that point as a Christian nation with all the things that they had listed. And that was the tree being planted that would one day bear its pernicious fruit. So you have a partisan government. Let's see, and the government, by becoming partisan, had lost the power to keep the peace. Lost the power to keep the peace. The civil power, by becoming a party to religious controversy, had lost the power to prevent civil violence between religious factions. Nor was this thing long in coming. It all occurred within less than 4 years. The Edict of Milan was issued March AD 313. Before that month expired, the decision was rendered that the imperial favors were for the Catholic Church only. In the autumn of the same year, 313, the first council sat to decide which was the Catholic Church. In the summer of 314 sat the second council on the same question. And in 316, the decree was sent to Sicellinus, empowering him to distribute that money to the ministers of the legitimate and most holy Catholic religion, and to use the civil power to force the Donatists to submit to the decision of the councils and the emperor. The Edict of Milan, March 313, named the whole body of Christians as the beneficiaries, without any qualification or any sectarian designation. Before the expiration of that month, the provisions of the edict were confined to the Catholic Church of the Christians alone. In the autumn of the same year, when the emperor wrote to the Bishop of Rome, appointing the first council, he defined the established church as the Holy Catholic Church. The following summer, 314, when he called the second council, he referred to the doctrine of the Catholic Church as embodying the most holy religion. And when it had been decided which party represented this most holy religion, then in 316, his letter and commission to Sicellinus defined it as the legitimate and most holy Catholic religion. Nor was this all. While this was going on, also about the year 314, the first edict in favor of Sunday was issued. And that's heading up to what happens in 321, because 321 was the first Sunday law, though it was blended with Friday. It ordered that on Friday and on Sunday, no judicial or other business should be transacted, but that God should be served with prayers and supplications. And in 321, Friday observance was dropped and Sunday alone was exalted by the famous Sunday rest law of Constantine, all in furtherance of the ambition of the ecclesiastics to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for themselves. In 323, by the direct and officious aid of the Catholic Church, Constantine succeeded in defeating Licinius and making himself sole emperor. No sooner was this accomplished than the religious liberty assured to the Christians by the Edict of Milan, like the provisions of the same edict restoring confiscated property to the Christians, was by a public and express edict limited to Catholics alone. This portion of that decree runs as follows. Victor Constantinus Maximus Augustus, to the heretics, understand now that this present statute, ye Novatians, Valentinians, Marcionites, Paulians, ye who are called Cataphrygians, and all ye who devise and support heresies by means of your private assemblies. Devise and support heresies by means of your private assemblies, with what a tissue of falsehood and vanity, with what destructive and venomous errors your doctrines are inseparably interwoven, so that through you the healthy soul is stricken with disease, and the living becomes a prey of everlasting death. He's got Paul up there too, those that were following Paul, if I understand. I don't know who the other ones are. I don't know if anybody else knows. Novatians, Valentinians. Is it Marcionites or Marcionites? Marcionites. For as much then as it is no longer possible to bear with your pernicious errors, we give warning by this present statute that none of you henceforth presume to assemble yourselves together. We have directed accordingly that you should be deprived of all the houses in which you are accustomed to hold your assemblies. And our care in this respect extends so far as to forbid the holding of your superstitious and senseless meetings. Wow. Not in public merely, but in any private house or place whatsoever. Let those of you, therefore, who are desirous of embracing the true and pure religion, take the far better course of entering the Catholic Church and uniting with it in holy fellowship, whereby you will be enabled to arrive at the knowledge of truth. That sounds like force to me. Is that force?
Nothing but force. And force, I mean, they're taking away their own identity.
Yeah. You're forced to come in here to where you'll be able to arrive at the knowledge of the truth.
Their truth, their interpretation.
Yeah, that's an amazing statement. We need to be ready for our work ahead of us. It is an object worthy of that prosperity which we enjoy through the favor of God, to endeavor to bring back those who in time past were living in the hope of future blessing from all irregularity and error to the right path, from darkness to light, from vanity to truth, from death to salvation. And in order that this remedy may be applied with effectual power, we have commanded, as before said, that you be positively deprived of every gathering point for your superstitious meetings. I mean all the houses of prayer, if such be worthy of the name, which belong to heretics, and that these be made over without delay to the Catholic Church, that any other places be confiscated to the public service, and no facility whatever be left for any future gathering, in order that from this day forward, none of your unlawful assemblies may presume to appear in any public or private place. Let this edict be made public.
That would include Zoom meetings and Facebook.
Yeah, everything. Everything. Your private home, they said.
I'm thinking of our future.
Your what?
Thinking of our future. So Facebook.
So am I. Yeah. Yeah. Pernicious meetings, superstitious meetings. And think about the people that, again, I go back to my family. What do they know? They don't know anything about religion, right?
Right.
But they're on that far right side and thinking that it's like a trap that people are just going to be caught in and not even know they're in a trap and be supporting it. And what was the one we read? The American Papacy, I think, was the document that where it said that they'll have what did it say? They were ill-informed zeal, had ill-informed zeal. Meaning you're going to have zeal, but it's on wrong information. Just going to see if somebody else wants to read.
I can read.
Okay.
Less and less than 11 years from the issuing of the Edict of Milan, the Catholic Church stood in full and exclusive possession of the authority of the empire, both in the rights of property and the rights to worship under the profession of Christianity, and with a specific and direct commission to use that power and authority to compel the submission of, quote, heretics, unquote.
And think about where it says the rights of property and the right to worship. So when we look at the Declaration of Independence, they have the right I have it in my head and I need to say it right. To liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Somebody say it for me. I'm drawing a blank. You know what I'm talking about. Pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and happiness, we've come to understand the original intent was property.
Yes.
So they're taking away their property rights and they're taking away their freedom to worship
Yes.
and calling them heretics.
Anybody who does not worship like they worship are heretics.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
so
you have the power and authority to compel the submission. Force.
yes.
Okay.
Thus was made the papacy, the beast of Revelation 13, 1 through 10. And all that ever came in its career from that day to this has been but the natural and inevitable growth of the power and the prerogatives which were then possessed and claimed by the Catholic Church. And it all came from the Edict of Milan, bestowing governmental favors upon, quote, the unchristians, unquote.
The Christian.
No man can fairly deny that in the Edict of Milan and the religio-political intrigue that lay behind it, there was contained the whole papacy. No man can successfully deny that the Edict of Milan, though appearing innocent enough to fit upon its face, contained the whole papacy, or that the things that followed in the 10 years up to 323, which we have sketched, were anything else than the logical and inevitable development of the evil that lay wrapped up in that. Now, here's the question that is worthy of the most serious consideration by the American people. If a thing appearing so just and innocent as thus the Edict of Milan could so easily be made to produce such a world of mischief in so short a time and be a curse to the world forever after, what then can be the result of this decision of the Supreme Court of the United States to the same purpose as that, but which has not, in any sense, any appearance of justice or innocence?
So he's comparing the Edict of Milan to this decision of the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court of declaring this Christian nation.
And also, did they, I can't remember how it turned out, but the paying, they supported that as well, I think, paying clergy or religious teachers from government taxpayer money, right? That was one of the things they were fighting for.
Yes, that was one of the things. I don't know if that ever.
Yeah, I don't remember how that turned out.
Yeah, I don't know how that turned out, but that is one of the things that we're fighting for.
Okay. But they definitely wanted to declare a Christian nation.
Christian nation.
And you can see that they interpreted it as if this what already was. They already interpreted the Constitution then as a Christian nation.
Yeah, I don't even know how they even interpreted that.
What's kind of interesting, because think about the Edict of Milan, what we just read, that at first it said all Christians. It was clearly all Christians. And then it comes back and specifies the Catholic Christians. So I don't know what I'm trying to say out loud here. But you have the Supreme Court back in this day. I want to say we're in 1892, if I'm remembering correctly. I might have that wrong, but I think it was 1892. So you have the Supreme Court basically doing the same thing. They're giving you the interpretation of the Constitution. Would the Constitution kind of be like no, it wouldn't necessarily be the Edict of Milan, but they're definitely interpreting it their own way.
Yeah, I don't even know how they could even be called an interpretation. I would, rather than interpretation, I would say it's a downright ignorance of the Constitution or downright ignoring of the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there was not even a smooth way about it.
No. And
It was just blatant.
Yeah. And A.G. Jones clearly spelled out that that it's not Christian at all, that the document is not Christian at all. And yet they got away with what they did. And that's why he starts off this saying that this ought to concern every American, and every American ought to remember this. Remember that in the beginning?
Yes. Glad we're going through this, because I didn't even know. Yeah, forget remembering, I didn't even have an idea. So at least now we have an idea.
Yeah.
The American Papacy. It may be replied by some that there is not here any ecclesiastical organization such as that one back there to draw from this such results as we have drawn from that. This would not answer the question, even though it were true. But the fact is that there does exist here a most powerful ecclesiastical combination and organization, which in its aim is identical with that one back there. Its leaders and managers have the same anxiety as had those to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for themselves. And it is the longing hope of every one of them to make politics a branch of theology in order to more quickly to satisfy their ambition to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for themselves. And this Supreme Court decision gives them precisely, in very word, the opening which they have all anxiously longed for and earnestly worked for all the way from 4 to 29 years. So that the situation here now, under this decision, is identical in every way with the situation there at the issuing of the Edict of Milan, with the exception only of the difference in the governments, that being an absolute monarchy, and this is a republic, but this difference is immaterial to the main issue.
So yeah, he's comparing the decision with the Edict of Milan. Did I follow that right?
Yeah, well, you know, one was just made by the monarchy and the other was made by supposedly a republic.
Right.
But it's still the same.
Right.
Issue is still the same. This organization, in its leading and oldest form, is known as the National Reform Association. Yeah, and I keep getting calls by NRA.
The rifle or National Reform?
I don't know. I never answer. So
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
probably a rifle.
Well, even this rifle, they're far right anyway. So
Yeah.
same thing. It was organized in 1863 for the sole purpose of securing such an amendment to the national constitution that should declare this to be a Christian nation and so justify the enforcement of Christian laws, institutions, and usages and Christian morality upon all. Well, that's interesting. I did not know that it was organized in 1863.
You knew, you just forgot.
Yeah, I might have forgotten, but it's the first time I realized 1863 is also the same time when the SDA went south.
Right, right. Because it's on all the lines. So I know it's
Yeah.
not to pick on you, because I know it happens to me all the time. It's like, wow, it was there all along. But I mean, because it's on all the lines that it was 1863. But Indian
Yeah.
Doctrine Trust ones, yeah. And
Right. When National Reform Association was formed, and when we rejected the
you remember the midway points? Remember the midway points?
yes,
Okay,
it was the midway
was
point.
midway, yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
And just the light bulb. Okay. And the chief of all the laws, institutions, or usages, and the supreme test of the Christian morality, which it seeks to enforce, is the observance of Sunday as the Christian Sabbath. It has succeeded in drawing into close and practical alliance with itself in order as they have arisen the National Women's Christian Temperance Union, the Third Party Prohibition Party, and the American Sabbath Union. And in 1889, through the American Sabbath Union, it succeeded in forming a coalition with the Catholic Church itself as a material aid to its soaring ambition. This organization has greeted the Supreme Court decision with joyful acclaim. The decision justifies and establishes in completest measure just what this ecclesiastical combination has been working for so long. We shall present here a few short statements from this combination, which will show how they view this matter. In the Christian Statements of June 25th, 1892, one of the long-standing secretaries of the association said, "Is not this the time to remember that the United States Supreme Court has officially declared in a document that reads as if largely gathered from the National Reform Manual that this is a Christian nation?"
In a document that reads, did you hear? As if it came from the National Reform Manual.
Yeah.
Let's remember that what they did is exactly what we're saying here, what's in our manual. Where'd they get it from? They got it from us. I don't know, you know?
Wow. This is becoming more and more.
They read our playbook, I think is what I'm trying to say. Can't you see that the Supreme Court read our playbook?
Yeah, is not this the time to remember that the United States Supreme Court has officially declared that this is a Christian nation? Okay, so in a document that reads as if largely gathered, yeah, so it's a document that as if they got the playbook from the National Reform Manual.
Right, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
They read our mind.
Yes. Wow. And wow, this is huge when just reading this now, just putting two and two together. And Ellen White, she says what twice, right? I think she says it twice, one in near the 50s and the other one near the 80s. That Christ was supposed to come.
Right.
So, boy, had the Adventists been on track, these things would have never happened.
Yeah, and she even stated in the 1888 area, I don't remember what year, but I thought you were almost going to mention that quote because I think I saw it 2 times, but it might have been more than twice. But it's that time when A.T. Jones and Wagner were, giving the third angel, and she relates the third angel to the National Reform Movement, and says that the leaders of the church, though, felt that it was, I'm going to poorly paraphrase, that was the wrong path to go down, and it would actually take them from what they were actually needing to do, when in fact what she was doing was saying that the third angel and the national reform movement are linked. And the church is ignoring the national reform movement and saying that that's a wrong alley to go down.
And
So this work, this very work, so it's not just about the national reform movement, but the very work that they were doing, she connects to the third angel.
right.
The seeing the external.
Huh?
The seeing the external.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the very work we see today. And who do we have here now? The third angel, right?
Right.
Only now we know the work that's being done externally, if that's what you meant, Christine.
Right. I mean, because we're talking about the external now, but we weren't a few years ago.
Right.
Like before Elder Tess, we weren't talking about external events.
And they weren't looking at the external.
Right. But Ellen White was. She did see the external and she was connecting it. And Elder Tess and Elder Perminder connected it.
Yeah. And it's this work. It's not the national reform movement per se, it's the work of the national reform movement and who's behind it. And that very same work was, they were at hand in 1863. They were obviously here in the 1888 history, and that same sect of Protestantism in the 50s, 40s and 50s, and now today. And this is what we're about to see is the pernicious fruit of the tree that was planted.
So history repeating.
Right.
Okay, that's nothing new under the sun. History repeating. The third angel.
Oh, I wish Leonard was here tonight.
Okay, Elder Tess. So, I mean, I suppose it doesn't have to be exactly exact, but Ellen White was not the third angel. So there was somebody else telling to the church leadership, look at the third angel's message and look at the external event, which we know in our time has to do with sexism, gender, LGBTQ, all of that. And the church leadership is going to reject all of that.
Yeah, it's the issue of equality.
Right.
Because when you look at A.T. Jones' arguments back in that history, he was not doing what your Adventists today might think he ought to do. And that's where she pointed out that she kept getting directed to look at the 1888 history because we did not understand the 1888 history correctly. We did not understand what A.T. Jones fought for. A.T. Jones was fighting not for the Adventist church to be able to keep Sabbath or to say that the Sabbath is the true Sabbath and that we all ought to keep Sabbath. He was fighting for the equality and rights of all people.
Right. Equality, rights of all people, and so that there will be no oppression.
Right, because it would lead to persecution.
Yes.
And so the Sabbath and worship, we know worship was the issue in the 1888 history where racism was the issue in slavery in the 1863. And then the last restoration, it's all about equality. The last restoration is on gender. So it's all equality.
Whether it be race or worship or gender, it's all equality.
Right. Standing for the rights of all people, because this, I think I'm understanding a bit more that this was to be I think this was, there's a passage, I think it's in Jeremiah, where it calls it the city without walls. But remember it was in this document early on, I think, where A.T. Jones, it was early on this document when you had Madison and Jefferson and what they were saying. A.T. Jones was commenting that what it did was take away from this nation. We read it and went through it a couple of times. Trying to think of how to say it. That this nation, which was to be a haven, what did it call it? A haven was one of the words, but a haven for all the persecuted and the for every race and every religion. And that this judgment here by the Supreme Court then made it to where he says that the people that are looking to escape the persecutions of where they're at, take heed now, because now that the USA is this way, has made this law, or is made, as the Supreme Court has said that we are a Christian nation, that this there is now no longer any safe haven to escape to. So
Right.
it's supposed to be the land of the free. And the land of the free is doing the work of the Catholic Church. And that makes it not the land of the free. It makes it the land of the free for that Protestant sect to do what they want against all others. It's kind of clear, huh?
Very clear. Wow. The Pearl of Days, the official organ of the American Sabbath Union, May 17, 1892, says that this decision establishes clearly the fact that our government is Christian. This decision is vital to the Sunday question in all its aspects and places that question among the most important issues now before the American people. And this important decision rests upon the fundamental principle that religion is embedded in the organic structure of the American government, a religion that recognizes and is bound to maintain Sunday as the day for rest and worship. The Christian statesman has always been the official organ of the National Reform Association and is now the mouthpiece of the whole combination. In the issue of May 21, 1892, this paper says, Christianity is the law of the land. This is a Christian nation. U.S. Supreme Court, February 29, 1892. The Christian Church, therefore, has rights in this country. Among these is the right to one day in 7 protected from the assaults of greed, the God of this world, that it may be devoted to worship of the God of heaven and earth.
So the leadership of the church was wrong. You did have the third angel, and she says it was the third angel, that this message was the third angel. But we had no understanding. The church has no understanding of what the work of A.T. Jones was, because it's clearly right here before us.
Yes.
And this is the work that she says was the third angel. She links the National Reform Association to the message of the third angel.
Yeah, I've never understood. I tried, but I never was able to understand when somebody asked Ellen White. I don't remember who asked Ellen White, asking her if this was the third angel's message.
In verity, she says, yeah.
And she says, this is the third angel's message in verity. And I've never understood that. What does that mean? And I think now I'm getting a better picture of what she meant when she said that.
It's interesting because as Adventists, they hear that statement and it's like, all they're able to say is, yeah, the 1888 message was the third angel, but they have no idea what the message was.
Right. It had never been explained to me what it is. Yes, it's the third angel's message. Yes.
Yeah. And you just walk away accepting that. It's like, but what was it?
Yeah, what was it? I've never until now getting the idea of the third angel's message.
Equality.
Yeah. Okay.
Equality.
Yes.
The restoration of equality, racism, worship, and gender All has to be restored. And like Elder Perminder said that one of the camp meetings a while back, that if you remember where he showed the kind of the graph that showed the climbing of understanding and truth, how in 1863 we would have only been like at this level, right?
Right.
So we would not have understood all that we're learning now. That would have been learned in heaven. The issue of marriage would have been learned in heaven, if I remember how he phrased that this would have been developed and learned in heaven as opposed to here, because that it didn't get to that point. So those would have gone to heaven without knowing this.
And one of the very first uses that was ever made of the decision was when, in the month of April 1892, the president of the American Sabbath Union took it in his hand and went before committees of the United States Senate and House of Representatives, recited its argument, and demanded the closing of the World's Fair on Sunday by Congress, because this is a Christian nation.
So now you can do all kinds of things. You declared a Christian nation and you just opened up your door to do all kinds of things.
And now, in preparation for Thanksgiving Day, the Christian statement of November 19th, 1892, comes out with the following, which tells the whole of that part of the story. We print it just as it there appears, titles and all. Christian politics, the Supreme Court decision, the greatest occasion for Thanksgiving. Department edited by William Ware, Washington, Pennsylvania, District Secretary of the National Reform Association.
This was their paper.
Yes. This is a Christian nation. That means Christian government, Christian laws, Christian institutions, Christian practices, Christian citizenship. And this is not an outburst of popular passion or prejudice. Christ did not lay his guiding hand there, but upon the calm, dispassionate, supreme judicial tribunal of our government. It is the weightiest, the noblest, the most tremendously far-reaching in its consequences of all the utterances of that sovereign tribunal.
And think too on the Omega of ancient Israel in the time of the Jews. What were they doing?
The Jews of Omega of ancient Israel?
Yeah,
You mean persecuting Christ?
yeah, that too. But what was their attitude on the Gentiles?
Oh, the
And the
Gentiles.
Samaritans? What was their attitude on them? The Gentiles, the Samaritans?
Oh, yeah. Well, there were dogs.
And the Jews were the true people of God.
Yes.
And they acted as if to shut others out. They didn't belong.
Right.
Just like the Catholic Church did, and just like the Protestants are doing. We're the true people of God. And we're going to be this white Christian nationalism. And everyone else is what? Can't come in.
Shut out. Okay, wow. And that utterance is for Christianity, for Christ, a Christian nation. Then this nation is Christ's nation, for nothing can be Christian that does not belong to him. Then his word is its sovereign law. Then the nation is Christ's servant. Then it ought to and must confess, love, and obey Christ. All that the National Reform Association seeks, all that its Department of Christian Politics works for, is to be found in the development of that royal truth. This is a Christian nation. It is the hand of the second of our three great departments of national government throwing open the door of our national house, one that leads straight to the throne of Christ. Was there ever Thanksgiving Day before that called us to bless our God for such marvelous advances of our government and citizenship toward Christ? Oh, sing unto the Lord a new song, for he hath done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm bath both gotten him the victory. Sing unto the Lord with the harp and the voice of a psalm. William Weir.
So they believe they're doing the right thing. They believe they're doing the will of God. And it's the same thing today. The far right believes that they're doing the will of God. And they're singing praises to, and they'll be singing praises to the death and destruction and mayhem that they bring. Because they believe that it's the will of God. You remember that quote too, where it says that that the decree will go out. She writes about that. The decree will go out, and then some are going to get kind of anxious to because a set date where they have the freedom to kill. And that story is also in Esther. And then I think it was a dream she said she had, and that the writing was being done, and it was being, taped everywhere or plastered everywhere, the writing of the decree of the date that they all get to kill everybody, and some were going to be in their zeal acting in advance because they can't wait to go out and kill.
Now can anyone suppose for a moment that this ambitious combination will let slip a single opportunity to take advantage of all that this decision grants, in principle and in substance, when it grants all that they ever asked? If anyone is inclined to think so, let him bear in mind the fact that the petitions which this combination so persistently sent to Congress for Sunday closing of the World's Fair have been so laden with threats of political and other punishments that even United States senators have been obliged publicly and on the floor of the Senate to resent it. If they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? Of course, just as soon as they get fairly started, controversies and disputes will arise by which there will be forced in some way, by election, by legislation, or by judicial fiat, a decision as to what particular phase of the Christian religion or of Protestantism shall be the national religion. Old controversies, which have apparently been hushed for a long time, will be revived, and new controversies will spring up. New and old will commingle. And this will take place right early. And as a matter of fact, the door is already wide open for this very thing, if the first steps have not actually been taken in the doing of it. This phase of the matter stands thus. In the first year of President Cleveland's first administration, 1885, his Commissioner of Indian Affairs announced that the government should be liberal in making contracts with religious denominations to teach Indian children in schools established by those denominations. Wow. If you know, that just reminds me. The government should be liberal in making contracts with religious denominations to teach Indian children in schools established by those denominations. Yeah, that's, I mean, I've some just horrible things have been done to the natives of our nation. And I mean, just the statement brings up, what the missionaries did to Native Americans, indigenous people, and to the children. It was horrendous. I mean, I don't know if you read any of those, what they did. I mean, it was horrible in the name of God. But anyways, it should throw open the door and say to all denominations, there should be no monopoly of good works. Enter all of you and do whatever your hands find of good work to do. And in your efforts, the government will give you encouragement out of its liberal purse. The door was accordingly thrown open by the administration, and in walked the Catholic Church and 15 denominations of professed Protestants, who all received encouragement at the following rate: for 1886, $118,343 to the Catholics alone, and $109,916 to all the others together. Throughout President Cleveland's administration, this encouragement was kept up and steadily increased each year until it stood for 1889, $356,967. The Catholic Church alone, and $204,993 to all the others together. Wow. Then President Harrison came in with General Thomas J. Morgan as Commissioner of Indian Affairs and proposed to put a stop to this whole system of things and let the churches support their own church schools and teach their church doctrines at their own expense.
I never liked someone to own me. You know what I mean? And that's what it is. You get money from them, then they own you.
Yeah, it's wow. Yet Mr. Harrison's administration was obliged to confess openly in the U.S. Senate by Senator Dawes that it found it impossible to do that.
Are you there?
Yes. As it was found impossible to stop it altogether, they proposed to do the next best things and allow no increase of appropriations to any of the churches. Accordingly, in the annual estimates, no recommendation was made beyond what had been taken the previous year, and which it was found impossible to stop. With this, the Protestant denominations seemed to be satisfied, but the Catholic Church simply ignored the administration and went direct to the House of Congress and got all the increase that she then wanted. 4 additional schools adopted with an aggregate of $44,000 of encouragement, making $400,967 in all for the year 1890. Whew. When the Protestant denominations found that the Catholic Church was getting increased encouragement when they could get no increase, they raised the cry of raid upon the public treasury and perversion of public money to sectarian uses. Their cry of stop thief amounted to nothing. However, the Catholic Church proudly walked off with her $44,000 clear in additional encouragement. Through the whole of Harrison's administration, these Protestants have kept up their cry of stop thief, and with the administration against the whole of it, they were so successful as to reduce the appropriations to themselves by the amount of $48,647 in the 4 years, and to the Catholic Church by $31,432 in the same time. So that for the year 1892, the encouragement stands $156,346 to all the Protestant denominations and $369,535 to the Catholic Church. This is not all, however. And in the rest of the story lies the increased peril and the key of the situation as it exists at the close of 1892. The sequel so far is this. From the day that President Harrison announced the name of General Morgan as Commissioner of Indian Affairs, the Catholic Church has kept up a continual warfare upon Mr. Morgan, and as Mr. Morgan was still retained in his place, this warfare was thus indirectly against the administration. But as she could not accomplish her purposes against Harrison's administration, and as the presidential campaign came on with Mr. Cleveland, who had opened to her the public treasury as the opposing candidate, through her influence in favor of Cleveland for president. The following editorial of the New York Independent, September 1st, 1892, states the facts as to this phase of the subject. A still hunt. A curious feature of the present campaign is the still hunt now in progress among the Catholics. Our readers know with what persistency the Bureau of Catholic Indian Missions at Washington has pursued General Morgan, Commissioner of Indian Affairs, ever since he entered upon his office. They attempted to induce the president to withdraw his nomination and failed. They tried to defeat his confirmation and failed. They endeavored to frustrate his purposes by legislation and failed. They sought to induce the Secretary of the Interior to overrule him and failed. They appealed again to the president, but without success. They attempted to destroy General Morgan's reputation and influence by newspaper attacks, which only reacted in his favor and served to create a strong public sentiment against both them and their cause. It is seldom that non-Catholics of the country have been so united on any subject as on this. An effort was made in their behalf to defeat the renomination of the president at Minneapolis, which met with a most signal failure, and now a supreme effort is being made to defeat his re-election. A pamphlet signed by one of the officers of the Catholic Bureau, Father Stephen, and addressed to Bishop Marty, another officer of the Bureau, assailing President Harrison, Secretary Noble, and Commissioner Morgan for the Indian policy of the administration, has been printed and is being secretly circulated, we are informed, especially among the Catholic priests, with a view of defeating Harrison and electing Cleveland. We believe this to be a blunder on the part of our Catholic friends. It is an attempt to carry into politics a sectarian questions which does not belong there. there are great national issues of supreme importance to our public welfare, which alone should decide the result of the campaign, and the introduction of this outside issue is deplorable. It is an effort to consolidate the influence of the Catholic Church in behalf of the Democratic Party. Insofar as it is successful in this, it will tend to unite the Protestants in the interest of the Republican Party, and thus to array these two great bodies of religionists against each other. This is certainly not in the interest of either Protestantism or Catholicism, and most assuredly cannot result to the benefit of the latter.
Can we go over that again? Or it's because it's talking about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Are those the two that it's wanting to try to pit against each other, right?
Okay, my throat's blowing dry. Could somebody else read, please?
Yeah, I'll go through this paragraph.
Okay.
It is an effort to consolidate the influence of the Catholic Church in behalf of the Democratic Party. So they want to consolidate the influence of the Catholic Church on behalf of or for the Democratic Party. Insofar as it is successful in this, it will tend to unite the Protestants in the interest of the Republican Party. So they want to link the Democrats to the Catholics and the Republicans to the Protestants, if I'm understanding that correctly, or to the Protestants to the Republican Party. And thus to array these two, I think it means the Democrats and Republicans, these two bodies of religionists, or the Catholics and the Protestants against each other. Okay, I think I get that. I don't know if anybody has comments on that. So they want to, an effort to consolidate the influence of the Catholic Church for the Democrats. So the Democrats would favor Catholics, and that the Protestants would see the interest of the Republican Party, which is actually what we see today. Somewhat. I think that's what we see today. I mean, I think there's some on both sides, but what we mainly see is the Democrat Party is influenced by the Catholic Church, or not influenced, but they're all Catholic, but a lot of them are Catholic. A lot of them are Protestants too. Okay, but the Protestants in the interest of the Republican Party. And thus to array these two, the Catholics and these bodies of religionists, the Catholic Church and the Protestants against each other, using the Democrats and the Republicans to be against each other. Proxy war. Is that a proxy war?
Sure sounds like it.
So this is certainly not in the interest of either Protestantism or Catholicism, and most assuredly cannot result to the benefit of the latter. So it's going to pit them against each other, the Democrats and the Republicans, based on which body of religionists they are. The Catholic Standard charged that the Independent with slander in the publication of such a charge, but the Independent answered in a way that showed clearly that it was not publishing merely a flying rumor, but from actual knowledge. In its issues of September 15th, the Independent made answer in part thus: the still hunt. Our statement 2 weeks ago that there was a still hunt in progress among Catholics designed to prejudice the present administration with voters is denied with some warmth by the Catholic Standard, Archbishop Ryan's organ document, periodical newspaper. It calls our statement a slander and says that the document to which we refer as being circulated secretly has never reached the office of the Catholic Standard. That may be, and yet it has reached this office. And that is exactly what we said it was, and that it was designed to be circulated secretly. The document itself clearly shows. It is a pamphlet of 32 pages from the press of Gedney and Roberts Company, Washington. It is signed by J.A. Stephen, director, and is addressed to, I don't know what RT means, Reverend M. Marty, president of the Board of Catholic Indian Missions. though made in the form, quote, though made in the form of a report to the president of the Bureau, the document is a bitter arraignment of the administration of President Harrison, Secretary Noble, and Commissioner Morgan. It refers to the bigoted commissioner and to the not much less bigoted president. The commissioner is also charged with a falsehood, and the old accusations, which were promptly met and refuted at the time, are repeated, and all is written for secret circulation, end quote. The effect of setting the two great national parties, Democrat and Republican, against each other based on the religionist bodies of religion they are, as the respective champions of the two great religions of the country, which the independents suggested and feared, was not realized in this campaign, doubtless by reason of the secrecy of this still hunt document, and also for the very good reason that the chief campaign managers of the two great parties, Harity for the Democratic Party and Carter for the Republican, were both Roman Catholics. But Mr. Cleveland was elected. He who was the candidate whom the Catholic Church favored and who established the system of things which caused that church to antagonize Harrison, he was elected and has already, since his election, banqueted in private with the Catholic archbishops of the United States, the cardinal and the papal representative at the time of their late official assembly. I think I need to, not now, but myself anyways, and maybe we all can later, go back and just kind of, because I get what they're saying, but I want to say who was doing it. Unless somebody caught that, because I need to, for me, I need to read things over several times. So who was it that was trying to pit the two religious bodies against each other and kind of in a proxy war, with the Democratic Party being influenced, or however you want, by the Catholic Church, and the Republican Party, the Protestants? So it's interesting because we see the far right ruling the Republican Party and have this same mindset, this same attitude to, we can see what's going on in politics today and with what happened on January 6th. We can see how people are, trying to think of the right way to say it, they're anxious for violence. So now on the other side, the Methodists in General Conference, May 1892, decided to accept no more public appropriations. Okay, so it's the money and encouragements that we're getting. Now I got to rethink that. It was back when they were talking about the money that they were receiving that was pitting them against, because if I remember, the Republicans got far less than the Catholics, right? So they're pitted against one another. So the Methodists decided to no more public appropriations for the Indian schools. The Methodists were followed in this move by the Episcopalians in their late General Assembly at Baltimore. Such Baptists had been receiving this money, have done likewise. So they're no longer taking the money, right? No more. So such Baptists, okay. Such Baptists as had been receiving this money have done likewise, and leading ministers of the Presbyterian Church have been laboring hard to get that body also to follow the example of the Methodists and others. And if they have not taken official action to refuse the appropriations, they may be persuaded to do so at the next General Assembly. When these great Protestant bodies all thus repudiate the system, it is hardly to be doubted that the smaller will do the same thing. But will the Catholic Church repudiate it? Will she refuse to receive such approbations? Never. Well then, when the Protestant bodies all repudiate it, and the Catholic Church stands alone in taking public money for church uses, it is inevitable that the Protestant bodies will make a unanimous demand that public approbations to the Catholic Church shall cease. Then the Catholic Church can reply to all this with the argument made ready for her in this decision to this effect. The Supreme Court of the United States has unanimously declared that this is a Christian nation. So they have a purpose in their madness. As the starting point and leading proof of this, the court has cited the commission to Christopher Columbus prior to his sail westward from Ferdinand and Isabella by the grace of God, King and Queen of Castile, etc., recites that it is hoped by God's assistance, some of the continents and islands in the ocean will be discovered. Now the religion intended to be propagated by Ferdinand and Isabella was the Catholic religion, the religion which Columbus revered and which he hoped to be the instrument of spreading abroad was the Catholic religion, and that alone. Therefore, as this royal document is adduced as evidence that this is a religious people and a Christian nation, as the only religion contemplated or considered in connection with the document or its purposes was the Catholic religion, as all but Catholics are heretics and not Christians, it follows that the religion of this nation is the Catholic religion, that this is a Catholic Christian nation. It is therefore perfectly proper and right that the Catholic Church should be supported and the Catholic religion propagated under national authority and from the national funds. This is the argument which the Catholic Church can use at such a time, and the Protestants cannot deny that it is strictly logical throughout. The only thing that they can do is to produce as an offset the argument that the Supreme Court in the same decision goes on to cite other historical documents which contemplate and even name the Protestant religion, and therefore it is the Protestant and not the Catholic religion that is the religion of this nation. Thus the question. So this is like, if I'm following correctly, when we were reading on the Edict of Milan, how they said Christians, but the Catholics made sure that they went back and specified Catholic Christians. So the Protestants are doing the same thing. They're going to specify Protestant religion, not Catholic Christians, yeah. So thus the question, what is the Christian religion? Would be raised, the controversy would be opened, and the contest would begin. Would begin. Now we do not say that this is the way in which this course of things must end. We do not say that this is the way in which this great contest and controversy must be brought about, nor that this is the way in which it will be brought about. We only point to the situation as it exists today and say that clearly this is a way in which it can be brought about, that herein lies strong probability that this is the way in which it may be brought about, and that because of this, the situation demands careful consideration on the part of the people. But come about this controversy, and this contest certainly will. So there will be a controversy between the two, right? Does that sound like the Babylonian War? Anybody?
Well, so far, it's talking about the controversy between, well, the Babylonian War was between the government, Seleucus and Antigonus. Antigonus represented the government, and Seleucus represented the papacy. Right? But so far, this sounds like between the Protestant and the Catholic, between two religious bodies.
You said Seleucus is the government, is that what you said?
No. Antigonus was the government.
Okay.
And Seleucus was the papacy.
Right. but they were both fighting over Babylon.
Right. But so far, this sounds like not a government and religious body, but two religious bodies. One being Protestant and the other being Catholicism, fighting against each other.
That's kind of what I thought I understood Antigonus to be. Maybe I have it wrong. That you have you have the two king of the north is what it was symbolically. The two king of the north fighting for the title of Babylon, fighting for over the territory of Babylon. So the two king of the north, and that would be the United States fighting over, and who's controlling the United States in that battle?
Protestants.
Yeah. So they get the Democrats and the Republicans to do their fighting. That brings them to one religion or the other. I don't know. So you have the Protestants then. So when you get the Democrats out of the way, the Protestants go full sway, and you've got the Babylonian War. Does that sound right? Because it's the king of the north against the king of the north for the title of the king of the north. So it's going to be, wouldn't it be then Catholic versus Protestants?
Well, I suppose we can look at it that way.
I mean, I might be wrong, but
I mean, I suppose indirectly, because the Protestants have the control of the government, and not the Catholics. So I guess in an indirect sense, that could be possible.
because they're the far right is the ones that, and the Protestants, the far right is, the Protestants are ruling the far right. The Democrats, I wouldn't think would be fighting them, because the Democrats in this document, the Democrats are Catholic. But it kind of seems like this document, what he's saying is suggesting the very thing that's happening today. That you have a battle that eventually culminates in a battle between the Catholic Church and the Protestants for the title of King of the North. I don't know, maybe I'll ask Elder Tess some questions. I don't like to bother them too much, but I know that it'll all come out and be straightened out. It says that, and when they do, then with national prestige and political as well as ecclesiastical power and preferment, the prizes to be contended for, all the bitterness and intensity of the old controversies will be revived and manifested. And even these will be intensified. Commotion, strife, violence, persecution, and all the civil accompaniments of an established religion will afflict and even ruin the nation, even as that former thing afflicted and finally ruined the Roman Empire. So this battle between Catholics and Catholicism and Protestantism will be the ruin of the nation, even as it ruined the Roman Empire. This is why Jefferson, Madison, and their wide awake associates in Virginia so strongly and persistently opposed the movement to establish the Christian religion and in that state. This is why they pertinently and forcibly inquired, who does not see that the same authority which can establish Christianity in exclusion of all other religions may establish with the same ease any particular sect of Christians in exclusion of all other sects. This is why they denounced that bill as a signal of persecution, as differing from the Inquisition only in degree, and as the first step in the career of intolerance, in which the Inquisition is the last step. This was all true, every word of it. But if this was true of only an attempt to establish the Christian religion, how much more is it true of this decision, which actually establishes the Christian religion as the national religion, and upon proofs and authorities presented, positively declares this is a Christian nation. Those noble men then saw all the consequences in the principle, and they avoided the consequences by denying the principle. It is certainly true now, as it was then, that all the consequences are in the principle. And as the principle stands established and justified by the supreme judicial authority in the government, the one that speaks like a dragon, it's the Supreme Court, the judicial authority that speaks as a dragon, that is the one that's declaring this a Christian nation, Protestant Christian nation. So in all that, all the consequences are established and justified. So maybe that's to be thought about with what we were just discussing, because it's church and state. When the religion so controls the judicial, right? And that becomes the battle in the Babylonian War. I know I'm gonna send some questions. Maybe I'll talk to Aaron. So in all that, all the consequences are established and justified. In short, as certainly as in the Edict of Milan, there was wrapped up the papacy. Just so certainly in this Supreme Court decision, there is wrapped up the image of the papacy. And as truly as the issuing of the Edict of Milan was in principle and in embryo, the making of the papacy, the beast, so truly this decision is in the principle and in embryo, the making of the image of the papacy, the image of the beast. Both are described in their career and in their end in Revelation 13, 1-17, 14, 9-16, and 19, 11-21. I don't know how much further we have to go to get through this section. Let me try to remember where we're at. Because we should, let's finish this. Okay, so we're almost there. You guys okay to just finish this little section? It is,
Sure.
okay, it is too late now to avoid the consequences by denying the principle, as the principle is already established. Church and state, that this is a Christian nation, they've already decreed it. And all the consequences are in the principle. Too late, unless the whole people should rise up as one man and with one voice reject and denounce this decision, as it deserves, in the words in which the United States Senator William Pitt Fessenden denounced the famous Dred Scott decision as utterly at variance with all truth, utterly destitute of all legal logic, founded on error, and unsupported by anything resembling argument. Blaine's 20 Years of Congress, Volume 1. There is no hope of this, however, because the great mass of the people have been for years refusing and still refuse to believe that any mischief can ever come to this country from any such principles. While the ecclesiastical combination, which for years has been working to secure the very thing which the decision has now given them, will but redouble their energies and the use of the ascendancy which they now hold by the fiat of the supreme judicial authority of the nation. For these reasons, we repeat, it is too late to avoid the consequences by denying the principle, for the principle stands already established, and all the consequences are in the principle. And the ecclesiastical organization, which has so long been anxious to assert the government as a kind of sovereignty for themselves, will not fail to draw or even force the principle, all the consequences that are in it.
So basically what he is saying is the end is inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah. And nobody stands up and nobody knows anything about it. I mean, look at the Adventist church that was supposed to, and they rejected A.T. Jones, right? Is that right to say they rejected Jones and Wagner?
Yes, they did.
They rejected this message. And they were the ones that were to speak up. So now it's us that speak up. And people that God has in high places. I'm glad we're reviewing this because it gets easier to understand as we learn more and things unfold more. But it's really helpful to understand, I think anyways, in talking to the Levites. Especially when we look at equality that encompasses racism, worship, and gender. Showing the three histories. And I think it's really, to me anyways, it's real powerful to have her connection to her connecting the National Reform Association to the National Reform Movement to the third angel. And then your comment that her statement that I say that it is the third angel in verity. In verity, if I understand correctly, if I remember it means in truth. It is the third angel in truth. But what did it just go over their head?
Yeah, I just like I had no idea what that meant, and it wasn't explained what that meant, and so they probably didn't understand it either.
Yeah.
They didn't see the connection.
Now we know. Really good document. I wish I could, not that too many people read them, but I wish I could put PDF files up on Facebook. You can in groups, but you can't do it on just the regular posts. So, well, anyway, let's close in prayer. Phil, would you like to close?
Okay. Wonderful, loving God, Lord, you're an amazing God who so patiently teaches us and just brings back to memory the things that you have shown us and you're showing us, and things we didn't see before. Lord, you create another way so that we can see it this time. And for those of us who still may not see that, there'll be a next time, so that we can all come to one page, to unity, and completely understanding what it is that you are teaching us, so that we have a complete understanding of our mission, and so that we can be united with one heart, with one voice, that when it is time for us to go, I've always wondered, Lord, the Millerites had the charts that binded them, and everybody was united around the charts. Many charts were printed, and everybody taught from the chart, and everybody preached from the chart, and so it was all united. I often wondered, what's going to unite us? We don't have charts per se, and what's going to unite us? But I think it's becoming, at least, with the teachings of Elder Perminder and Elder Tess, and I think I'm getting a better understanding, perhaps not completely, but at least a better understanding of what is going to unite us. And especially reading these documents by A.T. Jones and better understanding how history repeats and how these history is going to repeat in our time, and we can already see it. And so, we thank you, Lord, for visiting these your teachings over and over and over until we get it, and until we're united, and until we can speak in one harmony, one voice, And the words of our Lord Jesus, not one tittle, not one jot is going to be removed. And so thank you, Lord, for these lessons that you're teaching us. And may we continue to be diligent in coming together, not only in just these documents, which are priceless and precious, but learning about our lines, equality with Eden to Eden, and all the other lines that we need to learn that would be useful to take to the Levites, because we already know, Lord, that you've already talking to their hearts. And so when it is time, Lord, may we give the trumpet a certain sound, to read the laws very distinctly, that when they hear it, they will know it, that this is the truth, and they will accept it. So thank you, Lord. And may you continue to bless each and every one of us and protect us as we depart until we meet again Friday evening. Yeshua's wonderful and mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Yeah, and Friday, everybody